Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And if you've been paying attention, Xbox Game Pass right now is absolutely loaded. And I mean absolutely loaded. The last month and a half might honestly be the best lineup in Xbox Game Pass history, which, that's saying a lot. And that's also kind of the thing here, because that continues on with more day one game reveals. They just announced their next wave of games, and we're going to talk all about that today. Then also Square Enix, they had some very interesting things to say about their future as well. So yeah, we got a lot to get into here, and with that, let's just go and jump right into things. Starting off with Yakuza Like a Dragon. They just revealed the release date for their next big mainline game, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This will have the return of both Ichiban and Kiryu as dual protagonists, which I think longtime fans are going to be pretty happy about that. Though I don't recommend watching the new trailer unless you're completely caught up with the story. There are some pretty major spoilers involved, but what I will say here is that it will be a turn-based JRPG once again. I know the fan base can be a little mixed on which format they prefer, the new turn-based gameplay or that more beat-em-up style that the franchise started off with, but truthfully, I think both styles are a lot of fun. The Yakuza franchise surprisingly works as a turn-based RPG, as we saw with Yakuza 7, and I like how RGG is handling this situation. As we've seen over the last few years, they have a lot of side projects as well that takes advantage of that more beat-em-up style of gameplay. They have the Judgment series. They just released Like a Dragon Ishin earlier this year, and they also have The Man Who Erased His Name, which releases on November 9th. So I think fans of both forms of gameplay have different games to look forward to. For that matter, Yakuza fans are eating very well right now because, yes, in a 3-month period, you're going to get 2 different games. As I just said, The Man Who Erased His Name, which is starring Kiryu, that releases on November 9th, and then on January 26th, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth will launch for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Gotta love that this franchise is finally completely multi-platform, and oh, by the way, it does have a physical version planned as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and just jump right into the Xbox Game Pass news, because they have had an extraordinary 2-month period. I mean, let's just kind of travel back to August here for a moment to kind of give you an idea as to what I'm talking about. So they shadow launched Quake 2 Enhanced on August 11th, which if you haven't played that game, you definitely need to. It's a great enhancement with a ton of content, very feature-rich, and it is the definitive Quake 2 package. But then they also got Sea of Stars late last month. This is quietly right now one of the best games that's released in 2023, no doubt about it. For all of the big AAA games that's released this year, which there's a lot, but Sea of Stars still shines bright among the very best. That is how good this game is. If you like JRPGs, this is a must-play game. I cannot emphasize that enough. And then right after that, of course, Xbox got their big hit game, Starfield. This is the game that everybody just cannot stop talking about, and this is the centerpiece to everything that we're about ready to talk about. Starfield has taken the gaming world by storm. People are losing their mind over this game. There's been discourse after discourse, which, it's funny because it kind of goes to show you the impact that this game has had. You only really see that type of crazy talk, which, this has been on a whole different level, but you only see that type of crazy talk when something is super popular and is highly anticipated, especially if it's an Xbox title, as this is. But nothing is slowing this train down. It has an 86 on OpenCritic. The PC version on Metacritic has an 87, and the Xbox version has an 84. So it's been well received, but more importantly, players are flocking to this game in droves. As was reported the other day, Starfield is the 5th fastest selling game in Europe for 2023, which is crazy impressive considering it's available in Game Pass, yet still it is selling faster than games like Final Fantasy 16 and Resident Evil 4 Remake. Those are 2 big games from 2 big franchises. But that's the thing, because it's now also officially surpassed 10 million players worldwide. Bethesda just announced this, and Starfield, it continues to be Bethesda's biggest launch ever, which, if you think about that, this is the same studio that brought us games like Skyrim and Fallout 4, so they've had successful launches before, but still, Starfield tops those games as well. So no matter how you want to slice this, because I know the discourse, it's still trying to brew up, but no matter how you slice this, Starfield has been a resounding success. Xbox got their big hit game, and this is still within just its first month alone. Its player count will continue to rise as the year goes by, and ultimately, you're looking at one of the most successful 2023 games, which is saying a lot. This year, as a lot of us kind of know, has been stacked from beginning to end. There is more here, though, because, as I said, Xbox Game Pass subscribers, they're living the good life right now. If those 3 games weren't already enough, well, they just announced their next wave of games as well, and check this out. You can play Lies of P right now, that just launched, and then also Party Animals, Gotham Knights, The Lamplighters League, Payday 3, and then last but not least, Cocoon. So if you're keeping count here, that's 5 day 1 releases in just this wave alone. Go and add those other 3 that we just talked about, and that brings us up to 8. And honestly, that wasn't even all of the day 1 games that's released over the last 60 days. But nonetheless, I'd say that almost every one of these new games here are worth paying attention to. The first here, though, starts off with Lies of P. This is a Bloodborne-inspired game set in the Pinocchio universe. It's a weird combo on paper, but it does work. Reviews have been rolling out over the last few days, and it currently has an 81 overall score on Metacritic and an 82 on OpenCritic. I've actually been super excited to play this game since they first announced it, though I haven't gotten the chance to play it yet. I am still playing through Starfield. I mean, it really is just a massive game, but I'm hearing great things about Lies of P. Several people are referring to it as the best Soulsborne game not developed by From Software, so definitely go check out Lies of P. It does appear it met its lofty expectations. Payday 3, though, that's another big release here. It launches tomorrow, and if you haven't played these games before, it's a cooperative-driven heist type of game. Payday 2 especially was very successful. I believe it has a pretty sizable community over on PC, and it is one of the better cooperative games that you can play. So hopefully, Payday 3 will live up to its reputation when it launches tomorrow on September 21st. Now, Cocoon is another one that I've had my eye on for a while. This, to me, is one of the more interesting independent games set for this year, not only because the gameplay looks good, but one thing that's really interesting about this specific game is that it's coming from the lead gameplay designer that made Limbo and Inside. So, I mean, those are great games, and now we can see if he can follow that up with a brand new adventure puzzle game, Cocoon. It is set for a September 29th release if you are interested. Lastly, though, the Lamplighters League has garnered some attention as well. This is a strategy turn-based game where you play as a bunch of outcasts, thieves, scoundrels, and things like that, and they all have their unique traits that you use in strategical combat. And again, this is coming from some creators with a good reputation. It's coming from the makers of the Shadowrun Return series, which a lot of people do like those games. So this could be a pleasant surprise when it releases on October 3rd. But there you go. I mean, seriously, the last 2 months for Xbox Game Pass has been flat out amazing. I don't think that there's any other way to word that. We've talked about this before. Day 1 games really make subscription services like this worth it. And not only are you getting a handful of Day 1 releases, but there's also a lot of quality here. So this isn't just quantity, it's quantity and quality. And when you combine those two, you just have to love it. Game Pass, it's the gift that keeps on delivering. And I think really the only problem here, and it's one that I'm currently dealing with, is that it's just kind of hard to keep up. Now, we did also get an update for Final Fantasy 16, and this has been such a hot topic pretty much since it was first revealed that it sold 3 million copies in its first week. At face value, that sounds absolutely fantastic. It's a huge milestone that not many games can achieve. But the controversy here really lies with how it compares to recent Final Fantasy games, as both Final Fantasy VII Remake and 15 sold faster. And then on top of that, there was also a previous report that claimed that 16 may not have met Square Enix's high-end expectations. Though I do want to emphasize that high-end part. I feel like that there's been some confusion here, or maybe people are just willingly ignoring that part. That statement does not mean that Final Fantasy 16 didn't meet expectations. It just didn't meet their high-end goals. Those are two very different subjects, but Square Enix did officially confirm in an investors Q&A that Final Fantasy XVI did in fact meet its sales expectations. This is coming from Square Enix's president, which said, "This achievement was in line with our expectations. To expand sales, we have planned a variety of PR activities and other initiatives to encourage more of the growing PlayStation 5 install base to play the title." So, there you go. This should definitively answer the ongoing concern regarding Final Fantasy XVI. It did meet its sales goals, and I do fully expect this game to continue to sell well over time. I think it's a great game personally, one of my favorite PlayStation 5 games right now, but they've also announced DLC and that it's coming over to PC, which will further boost its sales numbers over time. I think that that's going to be a big thing for this game, but I also think that it's going to be one of those premier highlighted games with the rumored PlayStation 5 Pro next year. If that console actually exists, which I fully believe that it does, it might then get a stable 60 frames per second, and I think Sony's going to really highlight that, and yeah, that could be another boost for it as well. So I think Final Fantasy XVI has a bright future ahead of it, and it will remain an actively marketed game for the foreseeable future. That is kind of the thing here, though, because outside of Final Fantasy XVI, Square Enix has struggled in the last few years. Their stock has reportedly plummeted by $2 billion in just the last few months alone, and Square Enix's new president was asked about this in a Q&A and how he plans on getting them back on track, and his response was rather interesting. I'd say for a few different reasons, but let's just go and first take a look at his response. He said, "I want to increase our profits. I see enough room for improvement in our operating margin and would like to start working primarily on our HD games. In addition, rather than exclusively brand new brands, we intend to take a nuanced approach to investments where we also identify existing IPs that have the potential to be upgraded to AAA status, keeping return of investment in mind. In this way, we hope to increase the depth of our portfolio." So, based on how he's kind of wording things here, it does kind of sound like he wants to have a greater focus on both AAA games and HD games. At first, I almost thought maybe he's trying to turn Square Enix into a AAA factory, but upon my second look here, he does actually very specifically say that they want to focus on HD games, and I believe what that means is non-mobile games. So, under that context, that's actually a great plan for anybody on console and PC. And with that response, I think Team Asano and games like Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler are completely fine. So we can all kind of rest assured there. It doesn't sound like those games will be impacted by any changes that Square Enix is currently making. And I mean, they've actually had some success. So I imagine Team Asano will continue to do their thing, and that means that they're going to continue to make great AA style of games. Also, I'm going to go and cross my fingers that The World Ends With You continues. I don't want to see another 10-year plus hiatus on this franchise. It's just too good. I love that series. But it is rather interesting hearing him say that they're trying to identify which games they can upgrade to AAA status. And that is something to really think about here. Square Enix has a rich history. They have a lot of highly beloved franchises, and I imagine with his comment, they're probably going over every one of those IP with a fine-tooth comb. And you know, that does kind of beg the question here. Which Square Enix games can be turned into AAA IP? And there's a few that immediately comes to mind here. Parasite Eve has to be atop that list. I mean, if Square Enix brings back Parasite Eve in a big way, this could kind of be what Resident Evil is to Capcom. It also is an IP that can give Square Enix a little bit more diversity. Being in that horror genre, we don't really see them do too much stuff over there, but I definitely think that it's a game deserving of a comeback with AAA visuals, and they could do this in a number of different ways. They could either do a remake or a complete reboot, but either way, I think that Parasite Eve is deserving of a big AAA comeback. Chrono Trigger is another one that comes to mind. Obviously, a lot of people believes that it's an all-time great, and it's actually surprising that Square Enix hasn't done much with this franchise, considering its status among fans. You would think that they could do something here, but maybe now with this new Square Enix president. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw one more game at you all, though, that I'd personally like to see make a comeback, and that's Vagrant Story. This was a very unique PlayStation 1 game that was, I'd say, ahead of its time in some ways. And I think that the remake treatment for this game could do it a lot of justice. I think a lot of fans would be pleasantly surprised with a comeback for this game. I think a lot of people missed out on its original release, and they could do some pretty cool things with Vagrant Story. Let me know what you all think about all this, though. Which Square Enix IP would you most like to see get that AAA upgrade treatment? Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all if you have a PlayStation 5 and or Xbox Series X, do you set them vertically or horizontally? And yeah, so most of you all do set them vertically, but there is still a large portion that sets them horizontally. I actually set mine horizontally as well, just because that's how they fit my entertainment center. I will say, though, that these are some of the only consoles that I think looks better vertically, but, you know, it is what it is. The reason I asked this really is just because of the Xbox Series X digital concept that we saw yesterday. It was a cylinder, and I just think that that's a bad idea. Unless it has a PlayStation 5-like platform that you can place below it, yeah, it would be difficult to place this thing horizontally. At the end of the day, though, and this is important to keep in mind, that was just a leaked concept. I imagine that if that thing does become a reality, it will be a lot different than what we saw there. In fact, Phil Spencer did respond to all of the leaks, and this is what he said. "We've seen the conversations around old emails and documents. It is hard to see our team's work shared in this way because so much has changed, and there's so much to be excited about right now and in the future. We will share the real plans when we are ready." So like I said yesterday, none of those leaks are finalized. You do need to keep that in mind. It gives us an idea of what they're thinking, but they are not finalized. A lot of this stuff will change, and some of it can be canceled and everything else. So we'll just have to kind of see how all of this plays out. But hopefully, if this Xbox Series X digital becomes a thing, hopefully that design is changed as well, unless they have plans to set it horizontally somehow as well. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you like the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.